Hello everyone, welcome to the Kevin Lee Social. Thank you for tuning in. What initially began as an 8-part series interviewing entrepreneurs to share and inspire how they've successfully pivoted during COVID-19, I have decided not only to continue this series, but also to expand on the scope to understand and learn about people's craft, philosophy, the challenges they face in the industry, and their favorite failures that have helped shape them to become who they are today. By going deeper and understanding different thought leaders, businesses, and industries, the idea is to help cross-pollinate ideas applicable in your life and inspire action in this new norm we live in. I hope you enjoy the show. Thank you. Before we get on with the show, today's podcast is sponsored by Altitude Tea. Altitude Tea specializes in rare and exotic teas you can't find on supermarket shelves. Teas grown on high altitudes are more nutrient-dense due to the cold nights and misty peaks that slows the growth of the tea plant, leading to a higher concentration of aromatic oils and richer flavors. They are located in Waterloo and they do private tea ceremonies where you can learn how to drink tea mindfully using a traditional gongfu set and have over 20 varieties of tea to choose from. For our listeners, you can use the code BEYOND at checkout for 15% off. Today we have Zach Bronstein, the COO of a Web3 organization called Endaoment. They are a tax-exempt community foundation building decentralized financial infrastructure focused on social impact. Endaoment makes it easy to donate cryptocurrency to 501c3 organizations via individual donor-advised funds, community funds, and direct donations. To date, through their platform has made over 38.3 million in donations and supports over 1.5 million non-profits. Everyone, please help me welcome Zach. Hello, Zach. Welcome to Kevin Lee Social Podcast. Thank you for coming on. How are you today?
Hey, doing great, Kevin. Thanks for having me. How are you?
I'm great. As mentioned previously, really grateful and thankful that you've carved out the time. I hear that the company is growing very quickly, so it's exciting times ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a really exciting time since we launched just before fourth quarter of 2020. We were talking about this before, but $250,000 donations during fourth quarter of 2020, about 28 million during the full year of 2021. And we actually have already hit 10 million in 2022. So there's definitely something going on here.
Wow, that's phenomenal.
Thank you.
Zach, let's begin with what is Endaoment and how did it all begin? Can you please share a little bit with us about the journey?
Absolutely. So Endaoment, spelled a little bit differently, which you can tell from the podcast title, DAO in the middle of that word. Really, what we're doing here is we've created the first completely on-chain 501c3 nonprofit organization, 501c3 being a specific designation of nonprofit organization in the United States from the IRS. And what we specialize in is the facilitation and stewardship of cryptocurrency donations. So we really wanted to solve for two problems in the crypto and philanthropic spaces when we created Endaoment. The first of which was we wanted to make it really easy for donors to take their crypto, to donate it to charity and get a tax receipt for doing so. Currently, not really the case, not too easy to make that happen. On the other side of things, we wanted to make it really easy for nonprofit organizations to receive donations that start out as crypto in a way that made sense for them. Most nonprofit organizations aren't set up to receive direct donations of cryptocurrency. So if they have donors coming to them saying, I have some ETH, I have some Bitcoin that I want to send to you, usually they're turning them away. So enter Endaoment. We created a DeFi native application where folks can connect to it using their wallet, make donations either into donor advised funds that they create, community funds that have preset recipients attached to them, or directly to organizations. They receive a tax receipt for their donation. And then when we actually pay organizations out, we pay them out typically in the form of dollars via bank wire. So they actually don't need to custody a wallet, get a Coinbase account, understand things like how Uniswap works or what liquidity is. Instead, they just get money directly into their bank account to fund their programs.
You've made it sound very easy and simple, but in the nature of it all, I understand it's a lot more complicated than that. And kudos to you guys for putting together such an easy, simplified system for people to donate crypto to organizations in need.
Thank you. We were excited to do something that would allow nonprofits to gain access to this ballooning asset class that is crypto without needing to handle a bunch of overhead ahead of time, right? We didn't want them to need to shell out hundreds or thousands of dollars to get set up in this world. We didn't want them to need to hire additional staff members to bring on Web3 crypto expertise to their team, and instead wanted to create a system that could be of use to nonprofits at zero cost to them. And what I didn't talk about in that intro was like, how does this platform work? Like, where is the money coming from that funds the actual platform activities? Two really important notes here. One, never is it coming from any of the nonprofits we work with. There's no cost to use our platform. All of our fees are paid by our donors. They keep our lights on. And we take 1.5% of their donations as the dollars make their way through our platform.
Great. I love that model where it's making it easier for people to enter the philanthropic realm because you've taken out the costs, and it is all donation based anyway. So the money is flowing within that circle, which is a great cause.
Exactly.
Even from listening to this, as I mentioned before, endowment is an incredible undertaking. Can you quickly walk through the audience on the ways they can get involved or how they can use your platform?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So we really serve two distinct audiences. First, I'll talk about the nonprofit organizations we serve, really straightforward way for them to get involved. So we have on our website information about every compliant 501c3 nonprofit organization that currently exists in the United States. There are about 1.5 million of them. And we've created an organization profile page for each of them that passes our diligence checks. And what that means is that there are plenty of organizations that are on our platform who we've worked with before and sent money to, and plenty more that we haven't. And essentially what nonprofit organizations can do so they're ready to receive crypto donations from Endaoment is they can navigate to our applications page. They can search up their organization. We organize everything by EIN, which is employer identification number. So it's really easy for folks who are working at organizations to say, this is the correct organization. This is my organization, especially when there are organizations that have many subsidiaries spread throughout the states. But the org admin can come to their organization's profile page. They can click a piece of blue text that says, is this your organization? And can essentially tell us, when this organization receives a donation on Endaoment, I would like to be paid out, meaning I would like my organization to receive the funding in one of two ways. We allow folks to get set up with what we call a wallet claim, where we pay folks out in US dollar coin, or they can get set up with a wire claim. And that's what I was talking about before, where we pay folks out via ABA bank wire. So that's the first population of folks we serve, nonprofit organizations. Second population of folks we serve, and arguably the more important population of folks we serve, are folks that have cryptocurrency and want to make donations using their cryptocurrency. So really straightforward again, if you have crypto and want to donate it, head to endaoment.org. You'll have a really easy time finding either an organization that you want to donate to or a community fund that you want to donate to. Community funds are essentially collective giving vehicles that allow people to pool their money together before sending it to a designated charity. And you can also open what's called a donor advised fund. So we talked about direct donations. You can just go to an org's page and donate directly to them out of your wallet. But what you can also do is you can open up a donor advised fund that essentially looks like a deployed Ethereum smart contract. You can make donations into that donor advised fund. Whenever you make donations into it, you get a tax receipt for doing so. And then at your leisure, you can make what are called grant recommendations from your fund to any of those 1.5 million 501c3s on our platform. What that allows someone to do is, if you have a bunch of money and you just want to donate it to one specific charity right now, that's great. Go to that organization's page, make a donation directly from your wallet. But let's say you had a windfall event. You have a whole bunch of crypto that you want to donate all at once, but you want to grant it out over days or weeks or months or perhaps even years. You can put it all as a lump sum into your donor advised fund and get immediately get a tax receipt, excuse me.
Yep.
And then when you choose to, you can send that money to the 501c3s you want to support.
Great. I see that you guys have tackled this on a few different levels. And it's the third option was quite a smart option pun intended, with smart contract as well, utilizing the technology of the Web3 to create a different type of fund that doesn't really exist at the moment.
Yeah, donor advised funds it's something that does exist in the traditional fiat world in the States for a way essentially for folks to donate large amounts of property or stock all at once, get a tax benefit for doing so, and then send it to charity later on. But what we've done is, in addition to taking this fund and moving it on chain in a crypto native way, we've also created the most transparent donor advised funds that exist because they're smart contracts on chain. So if a fund's address, you can look at that fund and you can see all dollars in, all dollars out. And that happens for kind of every interaction that happens on the endowment application is a Web3 Ethereum interaction, right? It's an Ethereum transaction, which means that anyone with sufficient knowledge of the Ethereum blockchain, use of an application like etherscan.io, they can essentially conduct a public audit of our organization to see where all funds are coming from, the tokens that we're receiving, us taking it to automated market makers like Uniswap to trade it out into US dollar coin, moving those US dollar coins into funds and then to orgs and then paying them out appropriately.
I love that transparency that the whole Ethereum blockchain and this technology provides. That's something that we definitely do not get access to. So it's great. You guys are now providing that and people can do that. And so I wanted to quickly ask, since we're on that topic, with the organizations that are onboarding with you guys at the moment, is it only American organizations?
So yes, currently we're only legally allowed to work with US-based 501c3 organizations.
Yep.
Luckily, what that does mean is that there are plenty of international organizations that have a taxable entity, a 501c3 entity in the United States, so they fall under this category. Doctors Without Borders, great example of this. They're an organization headquartered in France. They have a US-based entity, so we are allowed to send them grant recommendations or direct donations using the endowment platform. That said, we'd love to expand beyond just the markets that we think will have the easiest access to in the coming months and coming months and years would be the nonprofits that are in the UK and in Australia. So luckily, this happens to be a conversation between us, and you're in Australia. So hopefully we'll be able to support you folks there sometime soon. We just go through an extensive legal review process for anything that we do to ensure that we're always not just meeting requirements, but exceeding any legal requirements ahead of us.
And how about the community funded projects? You've already made it clear that you only work with American-based projects at the moment. And how do they become part on board? Because they're not the 501c accredited.
Yeah, so I hear where your question's coming from, which is like, what are these community funds? How do they work? What's going on there? So a community fund is very similar to an individual's donor advised fund, right? Individual donor advised fund, Zach, create a fund, move some crypto into that fund, and then can grant it out to charity. A community fund works essentially the same way, except it is open in some way. So what do I mean by that? We really have two different types of community funds on our site. One I'll call a special interest fund, and the one I'll call a protocol community. Protocol community fund would look something like a Web3 project or group of folks coming to Endaoment saying, we want to open up a community fund where anyone can donate into that fund and where we are voting on who's going to receive the grant recommendations from that fund on some platform like Snapshot. So a great example of this, we had the Rari team create the Rari Capital Foundation at Endaoment. They made a donation of a couple $1,000s from their treasury. And then they went on Snapshot, created proposals on a monthly basis and asked their RGT holders, the Rari governance token, essentially the governance token over their platform, to vote on who would receive these funds, which was super cool. And that's like exactly what we're going for at Endaoment, creating an opportunity for community engagement on. The other type of community funds we have are special interest funds. And I think a good example of this is the Stands with Asians community fund that we stood up, I believe, in early 2021. I think it was March or April of 2021. Basically, a group of folks based out of LA got together after seeing some of the AAPI related violence that was happening because of the coronavirus, and they wanted to do something about it. They teamed up with a pretty famous NFT artist named People Pleaser. Were able to auction off an NFT for charity and then moved all that money into the community fund and opened up basically an application process for different 501c3s, primarily based out of the California area, to apply for grants from this fund. Each of these organizations had to fall within pretty specific philanthropic mission guidelines because of the reason that they were creating this fund and what they were trying to address, being that AAPI related violence. And what we were able to do was really exciting. They raised over $600,000 in that fund. We granted it out in $25,000 segments to, I think, 24 different charities. And then we had each of those organizations come back and submit an impact report to the Stands with Asians group so they could see specifically what funds were doing and what impact they were having at these organizations. And I should mention, both of these type of funds, anyone can navigate to that fund page, connect their wallet, and make a donation. So people could see that, hey, the Stands with Asians Community Fund raised $650K on this NFT sale. They then came to that fund page and said, you know what, I want to contribute on top of that a little bit more to be a force multiplier here, add to the pot of funds that is going out to these great reputable charities that have been vetted by Endaoment. And on top of that, been vetted by this group called Stands with Asians.
Yeah. I think that's a really great part to incorporate into the whole model. These community funds are growing so quickly around the world, and to have that double vet system with you guys, it gives a lot of people a lot more confidence as well and more awareness, since you guys are such a big platform now as well. Yeah, really appreciate what you guys are doing.
Thank you. I appreciate that. At every turn, we're trying to make decisions about how we're running this organization that are most beneficial to the overall mission, which is the growth of the philanthropic crypto sector.
I wanted to ask, what is the ultimate goal for Endaoment and where do you see it going? You've previously mentioned a little bit about expansion into the UK and Australia, but so what is the broader vision here?
So the broader vision for Endaoment is really to embrace our namesake. So I mentioned at the beginning, Endaoment is spelled a little differently than you would expect it to be. Endaoment. We like wordplay, and that's part of the reason why DAO is in the word endowment, but it's more than that. We're hoping that we can build a decentralized financial vehicle that will allow the Web3 space to embrace philanthropy in a way that the traditional fiat space was really slow to do, and I would argue never really did. We're hoping that by building Endaoment in a native Web3 fashion, protocols and individuals in this space are thinking about philanthropy really early on, are not waiting to make lots of money or to grow their protocol to such a large size before saying, oh yeah, I guess we could do a little bit of philanthropy or a little bit of donating. Right? That's what happens in the fiat space, where an organization is not going to be philanthropic until they get pretty sizable. And at that point, it's usually a senior vice president saying, this is my pet project. You can donate or volunteer here. We think we can do better there. So we want to create this decentralized financial giving vehicle that allows folks to participate in essentially philanthropy, however makes sense to them. Maybe they want to give directly to an organization. Maybe they want to participate in some kind of collective giving. Maybe that looks like a community fund. Maybe it looks like a role in governance over the endowment platform itself and determining how we set fees, which organizations we onboard, where we are, spending our time and effort in terms of expanding our products. And beyond that, we're also looking for other philanthropic vehicles. A great example of this is a charitable remainder trust. So donor advised funds, really straightforward. You put money in, you send it to charity at the end of the day. There are, however, more complicated giving vehicles that are also of interest to us. Our charitable remainder trust allows someone to take a windfall, put that windfall into our charitable remainder trust to designate individuals as well as nonprofit organizations to receive payouts from that trust and receive basically certain tax benefits when they're doing this. It gets quite complicated, and CRTs are a little bit more of a bespoke financial vehicle, but it just gives you the idea of the kind of ways we're looking to expand. And to put it really simply, where we're going here is we want to be DeFi's community foundation for all things philanthropic.
Again, you have put it very simply, I think, for a topic that's very complicated. And it really is. Kudos to you guys for taking the time to really curate this copy that you guys have put together, because me digging through the space, I can find myself confused at many points, and to eloquently put that all together and explain it to someone who's very new to it like myself and understand it is incredible.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. I come from... I had many jobs before I got to Endaoment, but one of them, or a number of them, were in teaching roles. So I'm a big believer that if I can't explain it, it means I don't really understand it well. So this is, a great opportunity for me to practice and really test myself to make sure that I have all this in hand. So I appreciate it too.
You got this, Zach.
Thank you. Thank you.
Zach, being an early adopter in the whole crypto and Web3 space, how are you navigating this space? And do you see any complications that may arise, it all being very new? For example, you mentioned that on the broader scale, you wanted to become essentially a more decentralized system, which is a lengthy path at this point in time. From what I understand, it's not as simple as it sounds to simply become completely decentralized at a whim. There's so many things that you have to decide on, like governance rules and how to really make it completely decentralized.
Yeah, so let's dig in there, because I think you're exactly right. There is this lofty goal that I just shared and that a lot of different protocols share, where they say, we want to move toward a more decentralized structure. That's great. And I think that if you're in the Web3 crypto space, you probably have this in your head somewhere rattling around. How do I move in this direction? And for us, the way I think about it is taking individual items, moving them to a decentralized or on-chain mechanic, and then finding new items and moving them on. And really, that's all you can do is take little bits of once, move it on-chain, figure out how to decentralize ownership of that particular item, and then move on to the next one. So a great low-hanging fruit example of how we want to move stuff on-chain is we're a 501c3 nonprofit. That means that we have a board, as all nonprofits do. We want our board votes and our board meetings to happen on chain, so that so we're being really transparent, that information that's being shared in those meetings is accessible to anyone publicly, and that folks can look at the minutes and see what's going on and what these board members are talking about. So that's moving things on chain, not quite decentralization. But having those votes on chain means that we could move toward a decentralized structure of electing members of this board. If they're on chain, it means people have a good idea for what they're doing, what they're saying, what they're in favor or not in favor of. If we created a voting mechanic for users of the endowment application to play a role in a nomination and election process of board members, suddenly we are now a nonprofit that has a board that is either entirely or partially elected by a decentralized community of folks. So it's all about just taking little pieces, moving them on chain, decentralizing them, and then finding other things that you can do the same things with.
Thank you for explaining that. Okay, I see where you guys are going with that. I think that we are living in an incredible time period right now, and the technology has allowed us to connect in ways we haven't thought of. How do you see the future of philanthropy as an industry, and how can you see it change?
I think that the clearest change that I see coming for the philanthropic sector, especially because of this connection between philanthropy and crypto that we've been talking about today, is in the realm of transparency. Nonprofits really like transparency, and donors to nonprofits really like that as well, right? Nonprofits are publicly filing IRS Form 990 every single year, which says, where did all this money that we got come from? All the money we spent, where did it go? Did we make donations to other organizations? Who are we working with? What are we doing? What is our mission? All this really great information, right? That's currently the main way that nonprofits are transparent about their activities. And typically a 990 is posted a full year or so after it is filed with the IRS. And that's for a number of reasons, but to be expected when $1.5 million 501c3s are filing 990s on a yearly basis. How is it going to change? Just in the last couple of months of Endaoment existing, working with nonprofits, seeing what people like, seeing what makes sense to people, the fact that we conduct all our activity on chain, which means, as I was saying before, funds are created on chain. That's donor advised funds and community funds. Donations happen on chain. Grants out of the funds to organizations happen on chain. Payouts happen at least partially on chain, right? Because the funds are starting out as USDC, and while they may end up as a bank wire, we still have to essentially move it to Circle and use their payout APIs in order to conduct a payout. But the way that Web3 will be a force multiplier in terms of helping the philanthropic sector become even more transparent, I think is going to revolutionize that industry. Let's take the example that I just used of having board members vote and conduct meetings in an on-chain fashion. Suddenly, you're creating a path for an average, of anyone that has access to the internet to have an insight into how your organization is working in a way that they never really would have before. While board meeting minutes are sometimes shared for the donor base of a specific organization, I don't know of any organization that keeps as detailed a record as we hope to when we move our board on chain and have their meetings and votes be conducted on chain. I just don't know that exists in the nonprofit industry currently. And I'm excited to give the nonprofit industry a tool to double down on their commitment to transparency.
I love that, because that's always been an issue I've had with charities in the past, and I'm not alone in that thought, as you can imagine. With these charities raising all these funds, it's then how do you really know where the money is going? Like, how much is getting paid into admin fees or marketing fees and etc. How much are they actually using up, and how much money actually gets to the people or communities or groups in need? And that's what I love about your platform, is that when I've scrolling through some of the orgs and communities, it breaks everything down, making everything so transparent. Where is the money going? How much is being spent, and so on. And yeah, I can see how that will disrupt the philanthropic industry, but at the same time for the greater good.
Yeah, a quick note on that, because this is interesting. 990s are publicly available. If you looked up your favorite nonprofit organization, 990, you'd find on a site like GuideStar, ProPublica, their most recent 990 filing. All we're doing is using the metrics contained within those 990s to say, okay, this is your total expense. And you also gave me the expense breakdowns for your administrative expense, your marketing expense, your fundraising expense, right? So we're just doing a quick calculation of what is the administrative expense divided by your total yearly expense. And suddenly you get the percentage for admin related fees, right? These are numbers that they're gettable by an everyday person if you know where to look and you choose to look there. And all that we're doing is trying to surface those numbers and make it really clear to folks like you who are concerned about how is this money going to be used, exactly where those dollars are going to be spent, or our best estimate of where they'll be spent based on how this organization spent money last year.
I think that's very helpful. I didn't know that was common knowledge and it was gettable, but
it's not easy to find, right? Not to toot my own horn too much, I went to graduate school for nonprofit management, which is how I know where all these items live. And a lot of what we talked about in the program I was in was how to look at a 990, decipher it, and get lots and lots of good information from it. That's not something I think the everyday person is expected to know. And I think our job at Endaoment is figuring out the right information to pass along to donors in a really easy to digest way.
Yeah, absolutely. And now, since we're on that topic, I'd like to ask you a little bit more about how Endaoment vets these organizations. And you don't have to go into every granular detail. It's an head overview, or as much as you like to share is fine.
Yeah. High level overview. We really have two levels of diligence that we do, or vetting that we do for any organization. So first level of vetting is automatic in nature. And is based on really the US government. So we rely on the US government to determine who is a qualified 501c3 organization. And also, as a 501c3 organization, you need to, file your forms appropriately. You have to do reporting appropriately, all this good stuff. We're hooked up with an organization called GuideStar. We have access to their API. And what they do is they pull down all this information from the IRS, which is the tax entity in the States, to explain to us, to tell us which are the organizations that are currently in good standing and can receive tax deductible gifts. So if an organization is listed on the endowment website, it means they have passed this first level of diligence just in order to be shown. On top of that, anytime that an organization is receiving any kind of donation on platform, if it's the first time or if it's the fifth time, but especially if it's the first time, we're looking into that organization to make sure that they conform to our funding policy. Is essentially boilerplate text that says that we do not support organizations that traffic in hate speech or misinformation, but otherwise we are essentially organization agnostic, provided that any organization that someone wants to give to passes that first level of diligence. They show up on our site. We look at their organization. We look at their 990. We see the kinds of things that they do. They conform to our funding policy. Great. They're approved and people can send them funds.
Great. Great. Thank you for sharing that, Zach. It's because I've never understood how they've vetted, and it's good to get a perspective from someone in the industry to share with the audience how it all works.
Yeah, that said, I think it's important for your audience to know there is a wide range of what is acceptable in the nonprofit world. And there are absolutely organizations that are doing all the right stuff and that you would look at and be like, you guys are great. And you'd also not be hard pressed to find organizations that are qualified 501c3s. They pass that first level of diligence, but are shady. And I definitely encourage everybody to look into organizations before you donate to them. Look them up on GuideStar, look them up on ProPublica. Just type in their name into Google and then space review and see what kind of stuff is happening. Of course, anyone can always contact any endowment staff member. We're happy to guide you through that process and help you to figure out, is this an organization that you want to be donating to?
Yeah. Yes. Due diligence. Definitely.
Exactly.
Being in your position, you get to onboard so many different organizations and different community funds. From your perspective, I want to see if you had seen some really unique applications or something creative, some fun projects. It doesn't have to be fun, but just something that you thought was interesting. Does anything come to mind for you?
Yeah, one does in particular. I think like the NFT activity on our platform has been super exciting. And what do I mean by NFT activity? We have folks that are minting NFTs, sending them to us, and then saying, auction this off, and whatever you make, send it to this charity. We have other folks that are setting up their NFT smart contracts to automatically pay endowment when they sell their NFTs. And then again, they're saying, move this into my donor advised fund, move this to this organization, et cetera. What was really cool that happened in late November of 2021 is Art Blocks, which is a really fantastic NFT platform that focuses on procedurally generated art. The leadership team of that platform came to us. They opened up a community fund. They made a donation of about $750,000, if memory serves. And then they turned to I believe it was their Discord community, and they said, hey, Discord community, we're going to be making like 50 to 60 grants out of this fund to different charities. We want you to help us figure out which ones. So in addition to this kind of self-generating nomination and voting process, they decided they were going to give more money to organizations that received more votes. So they had this really interesting thing here where they wanted to reward users of their platform with the ability to determine who will receive donations from their platform. It is not a reward like we're used to thinking of rewards in the Web3 space where you get some like airdrop tokens or something. And instead, people really liked having this ability to have essentially governance control over where these funds were going to be dispersed to. And I think that says really great things about what we're trying to do here, that there is incentive in just deciding where or deciding which organizations are going to receive donated dollars. And that I think is interesting. and exciting for our growth and our future as a 501c3 and as a community foundation for the DeFi world.
I think absolutely you brought up a great point with the community. And by the way, Outblocks is an amazing project, and what they just put off is amazing as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Getting the community involved, I think, is such a strong piece. People want to make a difference, but they also don't want to give blindly, I think. They want to be involved somehow, and giving them the decision to vote towards something, or they're feeling that they have the power to do that, I think is very empowering in that sense.
Totally agree.
Yeah. And my next question is based on also your experience, because you've seen so many start out with you. The question, it can go two ways. So normally I'd go down the mistakes and failures way, which is, what do you see the pitfalls of a lot of these organizations starting out so that the audience can avoid these mistakes? Or I'll leave the option with you. You can go down for suggesting some good advice for people starting out. So you can pick whichever way you like.
And specifically, you're talking about advice for nonprofit organizations.
Correct.
Right. Okay. So I'll give you the best of both worlds, one of each. I think a key mistake that organizations make when they're getting set up on the Endaoment platform is thinking, I'm going to come on the Endaoment platform. I'm going to claim my organization so they know where to pay me out. And then I'm going to totally forget about it. And crypto donations will just fall out of the sky into my lap. I won't say that never happens, because it definitely has happened. And like, I've been on a lot of really fun, exciting calls where I get to call somebody up and be like, hey, there's a $10,000 grant for your organization that started out as crypto. And they're like, okay, tell me everything. This is really exciting. But generally, what you need to do, which gets me to the success that organizations have at the beginning, is to reach out to their existing donor base and let them know, hey, donor base, we now have a new asset class that we accept. You got crypto? We can accept it via donation. And what that does is informs people that are already bought into the organization's mission that there is this new exciting tool that they have access to if they want to give their on-chain asset. And what I hear from a lot of organizations that I tell that to is, oh, we don't have any crypto donors. And I usually respond with, you probably do, and don't even know that you do, because you can't accept crypto. So why would they ever talk to you about it? And on top of that, even if you don't right now, look at the way this industry is growing. Look at just the amount of money in DeFi over the last 2 years, right? If you don't have anyone right now that has crypto holdings that could potentially donate, you will in the future.
Definitely. They might not have it yet, but for sure, the time will come when they do. It's such a growing and expanding space at the moment. It's hard not to avoid.
I totally agree with that. And at my old role, I was working in finance at Morgan Stanley. And I was there for about 5 years before joining Endaoment. Every year, in some way, something about crypto, something about Bitcoin, something about Ethereum would come up. And the executives of this organization, or at least the managers that I worked with closely, kind of had the attitude of, it's not important enough yet. It's not important enough yet. And just every year, it gets harder and harder to say that. And the longer you say that, the less likely you're going to be an early adopter of this, something like revolutionary and super cool that is actively being developed as we record this podcast.
Yeah. Understand. Come join us, everyone.
Exactly.
With the success of Endaoment raising millions of dollars, as you've mentioned, for all these amazing communities and organizations, I'm sure it hasn't always been this way. Was there a pivotal point on the Endaoment journey where things had taken off?
I like that question because it brings me back to the early days. Like I was saying earlier, first 3 months that we were open, fourth quarter 2020, it was giving season. We raised $250,000. It was not a ton. It was like really exciting to do, but we knew just based on that 1.5% fee, we would need to raise a lot more money just in order to keep the lights on into perpetuity. And for me, I think the biggest red light going off telling me like we're in the right space is when the first 7-figure gift came in. This was in March or April of 2021. And we had 0x Maki from the SushiSwap dev team come over and wanted to open up a SushiSwap community fund. Basically, They had made a nice chunk of change on the sushi token, wanted to make a donation of that token, and wanted to support a number of different organizations that the leadership team, in tandem with some members of their community, were really excited about. And the process of working with the Sushi Swap dev team to make sure they felt good about our process, our flow, our application, helping the nonprofits to understand like where these dollars were coming from and why they were receiving such a large, amount of money from an organization that none of them had ever heard of before, not just Endaoment, but they had never heard of Sushi Swap. It really dawned on me how revolutionary what we were doing could be. That not only is this going to make life like easy for people that want to receive donations that start out as crypto but end up as dollars, but just like the sheer amount of desire that people have in the Web3 space to do something like this. We've seen over the course of the last few years, single individuals like Vitalik have shown that crypto philanthropy is not a 7 or 8 or 9, but a 10-figure industry. In one transaction, a 10-figure industry. So like clearly there is so much energy here that shouldn't be capitalized on. And I think my favorite thing about working in this Web3 space is just like so many people that I talk to are so dedicated to finding a philanthropic outlet for some of the funds that were generated here that all signs point to yes. Clearly, like there is a confluence of this application, like the way that kind of DeFi applications work, the ethos that is Web3 and also that is philanthropy and the way they overlap and the timing of this all coming together. Clearly, this is an opportunity to build a philanthropic crypto giving vehicle that has never existed before. And I'm just so excited to be involved in that process.
I agree. There's so much energy and like money flowing through, like cryptocurrency is just flying everywhere in that space. And I think your timing with the whole project was also key, that you guys existed at a time where such an explosion of the NFT industry, exchange of like resales and the money that's been flowing around is incredible. And there's some individuals that come into such great windfalls that they want to do better in the world, but they're not sure how. And simply looking over to you guys and seeking advice from you guys, it makes so much sense to have you guys as an arm to help make that benefit to the greater good. Or else it becomes almost too difficult to go, okay, who exactly should I give it to? What should I do? Et cetera, et cetera.
And then once, even if you know who you want to support, going to an organization, Stan's Endaoment, and asking them not just to figure out how to accept the gift, but to appropriately receipt you for that gift and file the tax forms to make that happen can be pretty confusing for someone who's not well versed in the right way to denote cryptocurrency gifts. And our goal is to abstract away some of the pain from the donor side and also abstract away some of the pain from the nonprofit side, take care of all that administrative work in the middle, and then make it really easy. Just make a donation and receive a wire payment. Yeah, nice and simple.
I love what you guys do so much. It's so it's revolutionary, and I can't wait for it to continue expanding all around the world. That would be amazing.
Thank you. That's certainly our hope. And as far as we think about it, like sky's the limit. We're just going to keep pushing on it and growing and doing as much as we can to steward dollars from cryptocurrency into philanthropy.
That's right. And the more that you guys continue to do this, the more recognition, but also trust that's building in the brand. So people will continue to look to you guys for this kind of work.
Thank you. That's our hope. We want, no matter what people want to do in the Web3 space that has a philanthropic angle, we want folks to think about Endaoment. And even if we don't end up doing anything that leads to program revenue ending up in an Endaoment wallet, we want to help people to figure out the right way to pair the Web3 world with the world of philanthropy that benefits everyone involved.
Yeah. And so talking about Endaoment, is there any exciting additions coming to Endaoment in 2022, end of 2022 or early 2023, do you see? Or if you can share?
Yeah, so I can. I'm going to be a little bit vague about it, but I can absolutely share. We're currently in the process of creating version 2 of the smart contracts that underpin our giving ecosystem. And some things that we're looking at are opportunities to utilize the USDC that's sitting in your donor advised fund or in your community fund more so than we do now. Currently, when you make a donation, let's say you come onto platform, you have a donation you want to make, which is 5 ETH. So currently, or last time I checked, about $15,000. You move that into your donor advised fund. We trade it out for USDC and we move it in there. And essentially what happens is it sits there as US dollar coin until you grant it out to a charity. Now, we know that in the crypto world, there are lots of opportunities to take things like a stable coin and deploy it for yield. You could take it to Compound. You could take it to Aave. You could take it to Tokamak. You could take it to a million other places where you can either loan it out or supply it as liquidity or something. What if the funds held at Endaoment could be utilized in that same way so that you could, let's say, make that $15,000 donation, deploy those $15,000 at Aave for 2 months, earn some yield, put that yield back into your donor advised fund, and suddenly you're able to grant out more than $15,000, right? Figuring out the right way to do this in a legal and compliant way is tricky because, again, we don't want to just meet the legal requirement. We want to exceed any legal requirements to really be beyond reproach. So there's definitely a lot of like engineering and legal lifts that we need to get through here. But something like investable donor advised funds is where we're headed.
That's a really cool idea. I really like that one. Pretty much putting the funds away, staking it, getting interest, and then being able to invest an even larger sum when you're ready. It's
exactly one idea that we talked about and we don't have the funding for, but we were like, wouldn't it be so cool to stand up and if we could raise 32 ETH of donations, what if we stood up an endowment validator and we just had any funds earned on that validator that move that into an endowment fund, right? If people are just listening and not watching, I'm doing air quotes around that second endowment, have the ETH made flow into this fund that we can then grant out to charities. But there are lots of different and interesting, exciting things that you can do once you allow donor advised funds to be invested in some way, because suddenly you can create a perpetual giving vehicle. And that's really cool.
Yeah. It clicked when you were talking about that. And I was like, yes, it's that, continuity and perpetuity, constant payout of a charity that never ceases to exist, pretty much, that would be amazing.
Exactly. And to have a charity that is able to not have a MetaMask wallet or a Coinbase account or ever touch anything crypto, who is funded by proceeds generated from yield farming, that's wild. There are words in there that if you asked me a couple of years ago, I'd be like, what are you talking about? But there's absolutely an exciting path forward for us to continue developing our platform and helping to integrate these two often disparate sectors of the economy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really cool because you can even compound that with the royalties that individuals make from the NFT sales as well. For those who are willing to give that away, you can double down on that X percentage combined with the perpetuity and that allow that to compound and double grow, which is incredible.
Yeah. And on that note, something else we are working through is what if we could have organization smart contracts that could be set as the recipient for those secondary purchases of NFTs, so that anytime this particular NFT is sold, 10% of that sale goes to, for example, the carbonfund.org foundation on Endaoment. And suddenly, again, you've abstracted away all the pain and you're just creating a perpetual funding vehicle for a nonprofit that doesn't have to be involved in crypto.
Yep. Wow. That's exciting. I'm really excited you've got me all perked up energy-wise this morning.
I love it.
And so now we're reaching towards the more tail end of the podcast, which is more geared to a bit more some quick personal questions, or maybe not so quick, but more questions geared towards you, Zach. Something I've been thinking about is the understanding of why people get into philanthropy. And I wanted to understand or ask you, why did you get into this? And the more general answer, of course, is to help people, but I wanted to hear your version of it.
Yeah. So it really started when I was a teenager. I participated in different youth group activities and activities through the overnight summer camp I went to, where I was always strongly encouraged to do some type of community service work. And there was definitely a time as a kid, like really before the teenage years, let's say 10 to 12, 10 to 13 kind of times, where that didn't necessarily appeal to me. And I couldn't wrap my head around, like, why would I spend my time doing this? But pretty early on in my high school experience, it was actually when I went to a food pantry in Paterson, New Jersey. And I remember this like really specifically, that it became super crystal clear that there are people out there who really need help. Plain and simple. There are people out there who need help, who have it significantly harder than I do or ever have. And it kind of hit me that it's my responsibility to do something. And yeah, doing things made me feel good, got me excited. Like doing that kind of activity, like with my friends, was always like fun. And I was never going to shy away from that. But I always felt a responsibility to do something. And that kind of followed me throughout life. I was talking about before, I went to graduate school for nonprofit management, and it was not a free degree. Like I paid a bunch of money for that because I really wanted to figure out how I could be a professional in this world and do something to give back. After I got that degree, I went to go work for Morgan Stanley in finance for 5 years. And the reason I ended up there was because I wanted to do something difficult and math related, but also because honestly, because of their philanthropic program. They told me when I signed up that I could take any amount of time off that would not count against my PTO if that time was being spent volunteering for a nonprofit organization. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. You're going to do that. In practice, can you take 365 days off in a year and volunteer for a nonprofit and get paid? Like, that's not going to fly. But I was happy to be there in an organization where I thought they had some buy-in into the philanthropic sector. Being there for a while, nothing against what they got going on, but I needed a little bit more. And for me, like why I'm here and what I'm doing is I know personally that I need to spend my time doing things that are impactful and are important. And I feel a responsibility to do that. And I don't think that, like when I've had other jobs that have not been philanthropically related, I feel I'm doing this so I can get paid. Like that's why I'm here. It's just so I can get a paycheck. And there's got to be something more than that, because if everyone in the world is just doing the thing because that's the way that they make the most money, like that is not going to be a happy world for anybody to live in. And if instead, just even a small subset of people are focusing on the like important, impactful, positive work to do in the world, but it's going to make the world a brighter, shinier, happier place. And I want to be a part of that. I think I'm struggling with this answer a bit because the real answer is I won't allow myself to not do something philanthropic because that seems like a waste of time.
Thank you so much for sharing your story and your thoughts and your journey, Zach. It's not an easy question. I think it's a lot more, it's a lot deeper than people think. It's especially on the spot as well. No, thank you for that. I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will also share, I'm here because, and I'm here and not at a typical nonprofit because the way that we're able to put together like cool bleeding edge technology and that philanthropic element that's so important to me is exactly what makes this. I couldn't have architected a better organization or role for me at an organization to be in than COO at Endaoment.
Yes. And I can see that oozing out of you, that passion, that energy, that drive. It's like you're made for this.
Thank you very much.
And some really quick questions to finish off the podcast. Do you have a favorite book you'd recommend?
Yes, absolutely. Andy Weir's latest novel, which is a fiction book called Project Hail Mary, was incredible. I went on my honeymoon about not that long ago, like 3 or 4 months ago. Read the whole thing in the first like 2 days or so of sitting by a pool. But it's like it's a great story that I'm not going to say anything about because I don't want to give anything away. The sense of discovery that you have from page 1 to like the end of the last chapter is unrivaled in any science fiction or fantasy book I've ever read.
New one on the list. Thank you for that, Zach.
Yeah, no problem. Enjoy it. Enjoy it.
Are there any new beliefs or behaviors that have had a positive impact in your life in the recent years?
I think that here's a good example of this. So I've been married now for just under 2 years. I got married in August of 2020. We're one of those couples that had a backyard pandemic wedding with like our parents, and that was it. And I think in the process of planning a wedding, that wedding getting canceled, the wedding was originally planned for May of 2020. Obviously, it did not happen. I won't say that this wasn't something I thought of before, but gave me a new perspective for the way that you should expect things and the way to be grateful for things. And that, like, even more so, it's really important to live in the moment, to be grateful for what you have now, to pay respect to what you have now and the people that give you their time and energy in this moment, because we don't know what's coming. 2 years ago, nobody, or I guess 2 years ago was 2020. So 3 years ago, no one knew that the coronavirus pandemic was going to take over the world in the way that it did. And it's not really possible to plan for stuff like that to happen. And because of that, it reminds me not to think about the future and not to live so much for tomorrow, but you got to enjoy yourself now. Because we didn't know the last time that we were out to dinner that would be the last time we went out to a restaurant for over 12 months, but it was. And I won't say that every single time I go to a restaurant, I think it's the last time I'm going to be there, but it reminds me to be a little bit more in the present than I have been before.
That's a beautiful one, Zach. And thank you for sharing. It's been a tough period for a lot of people with the pandemic and the amount of revelations and things people have come to. Yeah, I have had similar thoughts to yourself, or experiences actually, in terms of exactly like you said, you go out to eat with your partner and family, and then next thing you know, it's off the cards for the next couple of months to a year. And then what happened to it all? It just completely changed the whole landscape, the environment, everything changed, and everyone's decisions had to be different, and working from home and etc. And it's
yeah, there were people that I was working with in the office on like March 12th, March 13th of 2020. And we went home that day to no fanfare or anything. We just went home. They contacted us saying, don't come back in the office. There are some of those people that I have not seen in person since. And it's wild to think I was spending 8+ hours of my life with them every single day for years up until that point. But things can change at the drop of the hat, and, pay respect to the moment that you're in.
Yeah, that's incredible. Thank you, Zach. If you could only send one single line of SMS text to yourself 5 years ago, what would it be?
Buy Ethereum.
Yes.
That's it. Like, really straightforward. I wish I had something more sophisticated. Like, I don't think that a text to myself is going to be impactful in like helping the world. I don't know. I don't think I could have communicated in one line of text that we need to create like an RNA vaccine in advance of the coronavirus pandemic. So yeah, I guess I go back to base principles.
Yeah.
Buy Ethereum.
Finally, Zach, how could people reach out or learn more about you or Endaoment?
Yeah, so I would encourage people to visit our website, endaoment.org, ENDAOMENT.org. From there, you can access our application, you can connect your wallet, you can make donations, all that good stuff. On that website, at the very bottom, you'll see links to get in touch with us on Twitter, on Discord, via email. And you can always write me directly. My email is Zach, Z-A-C-H, at Endaoment, ENDAOMENT. And then finally, I'll also just spell out our Discord link in case folks want to join us there for conversation. It's just discord.gg/endowment, the same way I've been spelling endowment just now.
Great. I will put all of those links in the show notes so that people don't have to listen to them more clearly.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you so much, Zach. I really do appreciate your time. You've been such a pleasure to talk to and listen to. You clearly know your stuff. I'm excited for what's to come for Endaoment. You'll definitely be seeing me part of the journey. I can't wait. Thank you so much again.
Fantastic. Kevin, thank you for having me. If you want to do a follow-up in a couple of months or a year or so, and we have contracts of V2 to talk about, decentralized governance to talk about. I would love to come back. Really a pleasure talking to you. And this, even more so than some other conversations that I've had, just felt like a really casual conversation. So I enjoyed this a lot.
For sure.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the show. All the links to the show notes will be available at kevinleesocial.com, spelled Kevinly. Conversely, if you have any interviews that you'd love to recommend, please send it over to kevinleesocial@gmail.com. I'd love to connect. Thank you. Until the next episode.